Hi, I'm Josh, and welcome to my giant game unhaul. My main motivation here is the fact that in about 5 months' time, I'm going to be turning 50 years of age, and I really wanted to do something special for myself, to treat myself to something really nice, but as always, the limiting factor is money. So I thought maybe there's a couple ways I can acquire money to get myself something nice, and I thought about a couple of options. I thought about a trip to Europe to go to a couple of punk festivals in the late summer, but ultimately I realized what I really most want that's going to be a lasting great thing for me over time is to build myself a PC. And this is something I've been really wanting to do for the past 2 years. A couple years ago I started just watching videos on YouTube about how to build PCs and all the information that goes along with that, and I thought, wow, that's something I would just really love to do. I'm just getting increasingly frustrated with my current PC, which is a Microsoft Surface Pro 1 that is about 13 years old now, and it's just this little tablet that is constantly frustrating me as I try to edit videos and play video games and do anything else on the computer, essentially. So I thought that's the thing, that if I can get myself a nice quality gaming PC, that's something that's going to last a long time and provide a lot of fun for me. But as I'm sure you're aware, it's not cheap to be able to get a PC that can handle modern video games. So, like I said, there were a couple things that popped into mind. One thing is, I talked to my two boys and I said to them, listen, I have this thing in mind. I really want to treat myself for my 50th by building a PC, but in order to do so, I would have to cut back on the Christmas gifts I get for you guys this year. And to their credit, both of them were immediately like, yes, do that, go for it, get yourself something nice, we don't need as much stuff. So that was really cool. The other thing is, I thought, I have a lot of games on my shelf that if I were to sell them could really add up to a decent amount of money. And so I started pulling games off the shelf, and initially I got a whole bunch, and as weeks have gone on, I've really dug deep to really get that motivation to get the games off the shelf. I've kept pulling off more and more until I ended up with this pile of games that I'm going to go through with you. And they are almost all of these are amazing games that for the most part I would love to keep if I was somebody who played board games a couple times a week and I had groups of people to play them with. It would make more sense to hang on to all these games. But most of these are just sitting unplayed, and like I said, they could be converted into money to turn into something that I could get a lot of joy and a lot of fun out of. So that's my motivation here. So a couple of things, if you are interested here, I am going to be selling these games through BoardGameGeek.com through an auction, what's called a Geek List auction. And once I eventually get that up and running, I will put the link in probably a community post on my YouTube channel. So definitely make sure you're subscribed to my channel and have the notifications bell clicked if you are interested in perhaps buying some of these games. I will say that it'll probably just be open to Canadian residents because of shipping and all this stuff that's going on that I really don't want to have the headache of dealing with. There will be the option of in-person pickup in my local area here in Southern Ontario, Canada as well. So apologies if you're in the US or elsewhere in the world, but I think I will have to keep it open to Canadian residents for the sake of the shipping part of things. But if that interests you, stay tuned for that link whenever I get around to getting everything prepared here. And then the other thing is, if you are not already supporting me on Patreon and you do wish to give me a little 50th birthday gift to help me work towards this goal that I have, my PayPal is WriteToJoshYaks@gmail.com. I'll put it on the screen here. And if you want to PayPal me a birthday gift, I will put it towards purchasing this PC and or not taking away as many of my kids' Christmas gifts this year and, still trying to spoil them as much as I usually do. So that is there if you have the desire. There's no pressure whatsoever. I fully understand what it's like to be struggling for money, especially in these crazy days of rising prices of literally everything. So that's there. That's the options there if you want to send me a little gift. Please don't do that if you're already supporting me on Patreon. My Patreon supporters are doing enough But let us have a look at the games here. I'm just going to as quickly as possible, go through all these games and let you know why I have chosen these specific games to offload. And we're going to go from the biggest games to the smallest so that I can pile them up in a relatively stable pile on my floor behind me here. I'm just sitting here on the floor of my bedroom doing this. But let's start with the first gigantic game here. The biggest game here is one that is one of the major reasons I quit doing crowdfunding, because I spent a lot of Canadian dollars on this game through Kickstarter or GameFound, whatever site it was, thinking that it would give me lots and lots of hours of super fun quality time with my boys. This is Egg Ammonia, an absolute beast of a fantasy campaign game. But I played it twice with my boys, and both of them were like, yeah, it's a cool game. But neither of them has asked to play it since. And to be honest, I kind of agree with them for the amount of work that it is to learn the game and play it. I guess there are probably other fun things we could be doing. So that's the first one that I'm really hoping is going to bring in a decent amount of money towards the PC just on its own, because like I said, it's a lot of money I put into that thing. Clans of Caledonia here. This is probably the final game that I will ever purchase through crowdfunding. I kickstarted this game some time back because, as far as I could tell, it was really only going to be available through Kickstarter, and it had a fun looking expansion with it. Now this is a double C thick game. It is quite a brick here, and I was excited to get it, of course, but like I said, it'll probably be the last game that I crowdfund. Another big campaign game is Mechs versus Minions, a giant cooperative game that's built around programming actions. I got this for my kids a few Christmases ago, and we did play through the first several scenarios of the campaign and then just at some point left it behind. I'm hoping again that this is going to be a decent amount of money from that one. Next is a cooperative game called Flashpoint Fire Rescue, and I have several of the expansions for this game. I also have all of the firefighters painted up, except for the last few which I've been working on getting painted up. That's one reason why it's taken me so long to get this auction actually up and running, is because I've been taking forever to paint these last few firefighters. So there's a lot of cool extra stuff involved with this particular game. I do enjoy this game, but there are the other cooperative games that I enjoy more. The other disadvantages with Flashpoint here are the fact that it has a lot of fiddly rules and it has a lot of setup, so it's a bit time consuming in terms of making sure you're setting it up and making sure you're playing correctly. So I'm probably ready, after all the years I've owned Flashpoint, to move it along, especially since I have not played it in quite a long time. Now this next one is another huge one, and this is one that up until very recently I probably would have put in my top 10 games of all time, and in fact probably for this past many years I've had it in my top 10, and this is Battles of Westeros. And I have literally everything for this game system, and if you've been watching my channel, you've seen me playing through it with Paul. And so this is the most recent thing that I've added to my auction pile here, because it was the hardest one to actually pull off the shelf and decide to get rid of. I really like this game system, not because I'm interested in the IP. I don't really have much interest in Song of Ice and Fire or the Game of Thrones IP, but I really like the simulation of medieval combat that this game represents and all the different scenarios and interesting situations. But the main problem with this one is similar to Flashpoint, but even worse, in that it takes a long time to set up each scenario. There are a lot of rules to remember. It takes a great deal of time commitment just to play through an individual scenario. And when it comes to these sort of playing with minis on a board and chucking dice to kill each other, I'm hoping I can shift that focus more towards my Warhammer Underworld's Night Vault factions that have been, again, very, very slowly getting painted up. So that's something that, if it turns out to be a fun game, is going to be much easier to set up and play, and also have an interesting element of building up your card deck that you use to play with. So a bit of deck building involved with that game as well. So I think I was also interested in keeping Battles of Westeros just because of all the many amazing minis of these medieval soldiers of all different types. But I thought, what am I going to do with all these minis if I keep it just for the minis? Like, there's realistically nothing I'm going to do with them, even though many years ago I was starting to design a medieval combat game, but I'm not really interested in that all that much anymore. So I figure it's probably time to let Battles of Westeros move along and focus on games that are a little easier to deal with. Now, this one has also been listed amongst my very favorites for many years, and this is Merchants and Marauders, the game that I've always said was the best pirate game on the market. I have the expansion for it, but have never played the expansion, sadly, and this is just one of those games that I have not played in over a decade for sure, even though I've put so much work into customizing the components for this game and coming up with this whole expansion for it that involves ports and forts and stuff like that. But again, this is just one of those games that has a huge rules overhead, just a lot of rules to track. The game is very long, so if I wanted to actually sit down and play this game again with a group of a few other people, it would be an entire day event just to learn the game, play it, and you know, I'm just really starting to move away from these gigantic monster games because they don't make it to the table. I just don't have the friend group or the inclination to devote that much time to them. So Merchants and Marauders is going to have to go. Here's one that a little bit similar to Battles of Westeros I was hanging on to in large part because of the awesome minis that come in the game, and this is Age of Mythology, the board game. Probably one of the games that has been on my shelf for the longest period of time. I don't know when this game was released, but I've probably had it pretty much since it came out. This says it was copyrighted in 2003, which is actually the year I started getting back into modern board gaming. And it was actually through, this is published by Eagle Games, and the first game that got me back into modern board gaming was a game called Attack, also by Eagle Games. So I would have got this probably in about 2003 or 2004. And I was immediately disappointed because it has all these awesome mythological figures from ancient Egyptian mythology, ancient Greek mythology, and ancient Norse mythology. It has all these great monsters and creatures, and a really cool theme of the ancient civilizations battling each other, but the way the game takes all those components and puts them together for the game is just so uninteresting. And so ever since I have played this game for over 20 years, I've been meaning to design my own variant, a heavily modified variant that involves playing on an actual board with hex tiles that you can actually move your monsters around on, because the monsters themselves, all these cool minis, just sit on the player boards, and when they participate in a battle, you're just chucking dice to see who lives and who dies. So really underutilized components, and that was on my mind for the longest time. And finally, a few weeks ago, I pulled out all my notes that I had made about what I wanted to do with the redesign, and I started thinking it would be so much work to get this game up and running, and I don't feel super inclined to do that. So I thought, well, maybe I want to hang on to it just for the minis again, just like Battles of Westeros. But again, I'm like, what am I going to do with all these cool mythological minis? I don't really have any purpose for them. So I thought, I'll just see if I can get some money for this. If not, I guess I'll just keep it for the figures. Now, moving along again to a game called Champions of Midgard. This is a cool little Viking game that's built around worker placement, and the reason that I'm getting rid of this one is because I just got another worker placement based game called Doggerland, and Doggerland, I enjoy the theme of Vikings, but Doggerland is another theme that I enjoy too, so that is kind of a wash. But what sets Doggerland apart, I think, is that it plays a little bit better with a little bit less dice randomness. You can get really messed up by poor dice rolls in Champions of Midgard, and even though I have a cool expansion for it that actually makes the game a bit better, I think I just don't need both of these games on this shelf. If I didn't have Doggerland, it would be very much worthwhile keeping Champions of Midgard, but I don't know if it's just because Doggerland is the shiny new exciting thing, but I decided to get rid of Champions of Midgard. Next up, another game with tons of awesome little minifigures is Lords of Zidit, another game I've owned for a long time, and prior to this I had its previous incarnation, which was a game about the Himalayas or something. I can't quite remember, but this is a simultaneous action selection game where all players choose their actions for the round and then get messed up by what everybody else is planning to do, and it has lots of cool little fantasy medieval figures that I appreciate as well. But it also is a game that requires 3 or 4 people, so I could play it with my kids, but what really decides that I'm getting rid of it is the fact that I have another simultaneous action selection game called Colt Express that I like even more than Lords of Zidit. So it's doing similar mechanisms, but in a way that I enjoy just a little bit more, so that's why Lords of Zidit is going out. Next is a train game called Maglev Metro, and I've really been on the lookout for a train game that really suits my tastes, and Maglev Metro comes very close. It does a lot of really cool things, but it also doesn't feel as dynamic and full of interesting choices as I might like it to be. There's just something there that doesn't quite push it right into the top tier of games, even though I do enjoy it quite a lot. I sort of regret getting rid of my really old Railroad Tycoon game, which was the original version of the game before they renamed it to Railways of the World, because ultimately that's still probably my favorite train game. But there's another one I have my eye on. I don't remember the name of it. I'm going to pop it up on the screen here because I'll probably pick this one up if I get a chance to and try that one out. But another failed train game for me. Another game that has been around for a very long time is Manila. This is a game that is kind of based on craps, dice-based gambling, and betting on where things are going to end up. It's a very fun game, but for my personal enjoyment, I've had to really heavily house rule how the game plays, particularly with the auction for the Harbor Master, which is kind of the main mechanism of the game. And so I thought, well, if I have to put so much effort into making the game fit my personal tastes, and I have other games that are based around betting that are, I think, a little bit better, I will have to get rid of this, even though I do enjoy the game quite a bit. Along the very same lines of chucking dice and betting on the outcome this time of a camel race, we have Camel Up, another longtime favorite. This is the 2nd edition, and this is a game that plays quickly, is super fun. However, I have my eye on a different game called Hot Streak that looks to be a really fun betting game that maybe is a little bit more under player control because there's just so much randomness. It's a little, it's more about gambling than controlling the outcome of what's happening, and it'd be fun to do a little bit of both, which is what Hot Streak seems to offer. So that's why Camel Up, even though again another longtime favorite, is on the way out. Next is a game that I purchased new for $46.99 plus tax, and I thought it would be fun to play through with my kids because this is a very simple, family-oriented, legacy-style campaign game that's all about racing up this cool 3D ziggurat. But as soon as I read the rule book, I realized, oh, this is very simplistic. At least at the beginning of the campaign, I was like, I don't think my kids are going to be super into this game. So we didn't even play it, still brand new. And hopefully I can get most of my money back because it has not been played. This next one has only been played once. It's The Lord of the Rings Adventure to Mount Doom. This was a gift from a dear friend who gave it to me for my birthday, knowing that I'm a fan of Lord of the Rings and board games. But I played it once solo and thought, yeah, that was fun to try it one time, but I really have no interest in playing it again. It's not a very interesting game. It's one of those situations where a very kind, lovely, well-meaning friend gets you something that relates to your hobbies, but they don't know much about the hobby themselves, so they don't necessarily know what they're getting for you. Even if I were to get a gift for another gamer, I'd be real hesitant to pick one out for them because everybody's tastes are so very specific in this hobby. The people that research the games that are out there and play a lot of games know what they like, and the best clue is usually to go on BoardGameGeek, and if you know their username, to look at their wish list and see what games they're actually wanting to pick up. Otherwise, gift cards are always a great idea. But yep, that's why Lord of of the Rings is on the way out. This one, speaking of gifts, getting for people, this one is Wild Tiled West, which I had gotten from my friend Paul for his birthday. And we played it, and it turned out that I enjoyed the game more than he did. It's based around polyomino tiles, and there's a fairly complex scoring system with a lot of different scoring things to keep track of. And so ultimately I ended up trading one of my games to acquire this, so I ended up owning the game that I had got for Paul for his birthday. And then when I reread the rule book to see if I thought would maybe play with my kids, I realized the level of complexity with the way the scoring system is set up doesn't necessarily make it the most approachable tile laying game. And if I wanted to play a slightly more complex tile laying game, I already have Planet Unknown as well as the Supermoons expansion, so I already have a game that very much fits that category, so I don't necessarily need to hang on to Wild Tiled West. Another game that I purchased new, read the rule book, and decided not to play was Bomb Busters, a game that's been getting a lot of hype over the past year. I think it won even some awards last year. It's sort of like a cooperative Go Fish with a lot of other interesting stuff going on, but the entire reason I didn't play it was because I realized that the game has very specifically been designed around a 4-player experience. And if you change that player number in any direction, you have to do some awkward things to make it work. The rules are there to make it happen, but I realized this is optimally a 4-player game, and I almost never play games with 4 players, so there's really not going to be much opportunity for me to get it played. So hopefully with its popularity somebody will be interested in purchasing it from me. Next is Hunt the Ravager, a little 2-player game that is a hidden movement game, but what's cool about it is you play a game with one player as the hidden moving player, and then you swap roles, and then the other player is the hidden moving player, and then you compare scores to see who wins. There's cool stuff going on here, but the way the game swaps your roles makes it a little bit easier for the second player to know exactly how well they have to do to win the game. And I have other hidden movement games that I enjoy more. So after just one play of Hunt the Ravager, it is getting sold. Same with The Hunt. This is a game I purchased new for myself and played it only one time. It has some really interesting historical stuff going on where it's based on a Second World War naval battle, and it has also some interesting things with hidden movement as well. And so there's a lot, again, that I really love about this game, but it's just not one that I have an opponent to play it with. If I did, I would love to explore it more, but since I don't, there's no sense in hanging on to it. Another one that's been on my shelf for years and years is Gentlemen Thieves. This little game that has a cool little magnetic opening box, which I always enjoy, is a game that involves hidden roles where you need, and this is why I'm selling the game, is you need a group of ideally 4 to 5 players, if I remember correctly, and each player has a secret role in the game. And this is another game that requires house rules to encourage players to keep that role secret. Otherwise, there's not much incentive for players to play in a very obvious manner. So I did house rules and things where at the end of the game, players had to guess what roles the other players had. That made it a little more interesting. But once again, a game that requires a small group and a game that required house rules, I thought, I love the game a lot, but it's going to have to go too. Getting back to little 2-player games, we have Agricola, All Creatures Big and Small, a tiny little worker placement game that it takes the classic game Agricola and makes it just a wonderful little compact 2-player game. I ended up purchasing some upgraded components for this game, and I've played it and enjoyed it a fair bit, but again, this was a kind of a tough one. I like the game, but in terms of approachable 2-player games, I have others on my shelf that I would rather go to than this one, so as much as I do enjoy it, I don't need it necessarily. Sticking with 2-player games, we have Spies and Lies, another game I purchased new, played just one time. It has some hidden guesswork, sneakiness, which is always something I kind of enjoy in games. It has the Stratego theme, which brings back fond memories of childhood. But the game itself relies just a little bit too much on just, I shouldn't say wild guessing, but making guesses based on a little bit of information. But ultimately, it's it's cool, but it's not a top tier game. This next one, Perry Rodent, has also been another game that's been on my shelf seemingly forever, for 20 years maybe. And this is meant to be a 2-player game, although I've downloaded all the components that were created by the game's designer to turn it into a 3-player game. So I have all those components in here, although I've never played the game with 3 players. This has always been one that I played 2 players. I played it a lot, and it's a very, very simple pick up and deliver type game where you're delivering goods from one planet to another and earning money in the process. And I would absolutely keep the game if it were not for the fact that I have another game that's very simple pick up and deliver style game called the Great Heartland Hauling Company. And the advantage of the Great Heartland Hauling Company is that it plays 2 to 4 players, whereas, like I said, this was designed strictly for 2 players, although it can be played 3 now. So I decided to just sell this one and keep the Great Heartland Hauling Company as something that offers just that extra potential player count. All right, we're getting towards the end here. We have a game called The Wizard Always Wins, or as I had renamed it, Evan Always Wins, because this is a game that I played with my kids when they were younger. We had a lot of fun with it, and Evan seemed to win a fair bit. At this point, the kids have sort of grown out of it, so as much fun as we did have with it, it is going to be on the way out. Snake Oil is a game that I purchased new, although I got it super cheap because it had a really crunched box. And it's a game about just selling stuff and being thrown kind of these wrenches into your sales pitch so that you gotta switch things up at the last minute and change your presentation, but I've never had a chance to get it played. So because of that, and the fact that I have a lot of other super fun party style games and now a lot of Jackbox games, I don't necessarily need to hang on to that. This one brings a lot of fond memories back. It's the game King and Assassins, a 2-player game, a very asymmetrical game where one player is the king trying to get safely to his castle with his guards around him, while the other player is playing the villagers, amongst which there are 3 secret assassins that are trying to assassinate the king. So it's got a great theme. I love asymmetrical 2-player games. I love games that are simple but quick to play as well. But the game is so much easier for the assassins than for the king player, so there's a fair bit of an imbalance there, which worked great playing with my kids because I could let them be the assassins and they'd have a decent chance of winning the game against me. But the other thing is I also have a good on the computer implementation of this game as well. I think it might be through Steam. I can't quite recall now. I always meant to make the board 3D because the game involves a lot for the village and assassins player, a lot of crawling up on the roofs of buildings and jumping off the roofs, and so I always had it in mind that I would make those 3D buildings to make the game a little more interesting, but never got around to it. And as cool as that would be, you know, I'll just have to sell that one too. We have another party game called Time's Up Title Recall. This is essentially charades, and there are a few other kind of interesting things going on other than straight charades. But I think that a lot of the reference cards that reference various pop culture things from however many years ago from when I purchased this game wouldn't necessarily be something that my kids or nieces and nephews would necessarily relate to. They probably wouldn't in a lot of cases know what the cards were referencing, which doesn't matter hugely because you're just supposed to act out obviously what the words on the cards are. But as much fun as we have had with this game in the past, again, we're talking when I was married and we'd get together with other couples and just play really fun group games. We had a lot of laughs, a lot of fun with this game, but I don't have groups to play with or any real reason to hang on to that still. We're getting near the end. We've got Flip 7, a super popular game that is sort of like blackjack with that push your luck card element. I had some fun with the game, but the more I played it, the more I thought it's kind of a dull game. There are other games I'd much rather play than Flip 7. For example, Can't Stop is another push your luck game that I have purchased recently that I enjoy quite a lot. And so again, with the popularity of the game, hopefully somebody will be interested in picking it up. Another fond memory from a game called Pro-He here, which involves players trying to sneak contraband goods under the noses of the other players so that they can score points by successfully delivering them. Well, the other players are potentially sending their law enforcement after those caravans to see if they can find the contraband goods. So it's a really fun, cool theme. It's a nice compact box, and it plays really well with a small group of people, but again, it's just not a top tier game. It doesn't work quite as well as I would like it to, even though I've had a lot of fun with it. There's just something about the gameplay that feels slightly off, and so again, if it's not a top tier game, it doesn't have to stay on my shelf these days. We have one more game and then a little RPG book. So we've got a game called Gift Trap, which is another one that has been on my shelf for decades and that I've played many, many times. Again, going back to the old days of being married and playing with other couples, this was always a super fun game to pull out with non-gamer couples or friends and just have a laugh at trying to give them the best gifts. We have the not safe for work cards as well, which are also good for a bit of a laugh. But it's been many years since I've actually played the game, and I have other fun party games that I'd rather turn to. And finally, we have a RPG book called Apillion, a Dragon's Epic, which is a game that I picked up after I had a lot of success playing Hero Realms with my boys, which was a print and play downloadable RPG that was the first role-playing style game that I played with my boys. And based on the success of that, I thought this might be cool. Every player gets to be a dragon character and have role-playing adventures. We tried it once or twice, but it ultimately didn't end up being as popular as Hero Realms, for example. And now that my boys are older, they're both super into D&D and their own RPG groups, so this is unfortunately not something we ever really got into. And that's it. Maybe before my auction goes live, I'll find it within me to pull out a couple of other games off the shelf and add them to the auction. Obviously, it gets harder and harder the more I take off the shelf, and the ones left behind are the ultimate favorites. But we'll see how it goes. Like I said, I'll make a post to let everybody know once the auction is live for those gamers in Canada who might be interested in purchasing some games. And if you do choose to send me a little birthday gift through PayPal, just let me know in the message that it's for Josh's 50th. And otherwise, I just appreciate you watching. I'd love to hear your thoughts about all this stuff. There's a lot of memories here with some of these older games that have been around for a long, long time. So that nostalgia makes it a little difficult, but ultimately, I don't think I'll miss them once they get sold. I'll just appreciate having a PC that isn't going to frustrate the heck out of me. So thanks for watching, and I'd love to chat with you in the comments if you have anything you'd like to say. Cheers. Okay, I guess we could probably go up a bit, down a bit. The other thing is, I guess, you know, obviously if I were even, and that we're, while the other players are potentially sending their police officer